You can start now. Hello everyone, welcome to Nerd Mela. This is Brahma Vadini and I have with me Shekhar.
Hello.
Due to the coronavirus, we are recording this over the phone. That's why the voice would be a little grainy. But the discussion will be good. Today we are going to talk about the concept of Indianness because lately we have seen it has become a topic of discussion and the word "Are you an Indian?" or nationalism has been thrown around and many people have been asked to prove their Indianness. So let's discuss what exactly it is. So let's discuss what it is. The first question that would come up is who is an Indian? How do we define this concept of Indianness?
Yeah, as you said, this question has been puzzling and dividing the nation for a while now. And over the last 2 years, this question of nationality has become the headline a few times now, whether it be the illegal migrants issue that has been brewing over the citizenship laws or the racial history of the country. The definition of who is an Indian is not quite clear. So we can take the examples of Alia Bhatt, who is a person of Indian origin, or Akshay Kumar, who is a Canadian citizen, and other PIOs like Sundar Pichai and Satya Nadella or Abhijit Banerjee, who are considered Indian. But on the other hand, we have someone like Sonia Gandhi, who is continuously vilified for her Italian origins, or the migrants from Bangladesh who are considered outsiders and are termed as infiltrators. So with this, let us answer the question that we began with, like what exactly is it being an Indian?
So what we can understand that in everyday conversation, being an Indian is an identity which explains that somebody is from India, the country.
Yes.
And so this can be interpreted broadly in three ways. The first would be racial identity, the second would be cultural, and then third, of course, would be the legal, what is mentioned in our constitution.
Yes.
So first, let's talk about race. As per the Oxford Learner's Dictionary, race is actually the groups that humans can be divided into according to their physical differences. For example, the color of their skin.
Yeah.
And race is related to the genetic attributes. What we see today is certain Indian features such as brown skin and then comparatively short height, body hair, etc. These are a result of generations of intermixing in the Indian subcontinent, and that is why people with certain physical attributes are identified as being from the subcontinent.
And when we talk about racial identity in the Indian subcontinent, there is a very interesting theory by renowned sociologist Dr. B.S. Guha. And he says that even among Indians, there are several races. And he has proposed an out of Africa theory, in which he says that the Homo sapiens, which is the human species, it did not evolve in India, and actually they came from the African subcontinent. And what basically this out of Africa theory says is that modern humans, they have appeared to have definitively exited Africa to populate the rest of the globe. And what Dr. Guha said was that the different races came to India successively and then stayed in the relatively isolated Indian subcontinent to ultimately become the Indian race.
To elaborate, we'll just very quickly take a look at all the different races that came to India from different regions. The first would be the Negritos. Though some people claim that their presence today is negligible in India, the elements of the race have been found in the blood of those residents of Andaman Islands and even some tribes in South India. And Negritos are said to be the first to arrive in the Indian subcontinent. The second among them would be the Proto-Australoids, and these race followed the Negritos into India, and they are also known as the pre-Dravidian race. And elements of this race are most commonly found in the tribes of the central India. The third one would be Mongoloids. They are said to have come from the northern and eastern mountain ranges into India and largely settled in India's northeast. The next would be the Mediterraneans, who came to India from Southwest Asia and are most commonly found race across the India. The fifth and sixth would be Western Brachycephals and Nordics. The Western Brachycephals are broad-headed race that is commonly found in the regions of Saurashtra, Gujarat, Bengal, Odisha, Karnataka, among others. and the Nordics were the last to arrive among these races to the Indian subcontinent, and the race is mainly found in North India and in a mixed form with the Mediterranean race. So when we talk about these races, another important fact that we should remember here is that the three races of Negritos, Proto-Australoids and Mongoloids largely constitute India's tribal population today, while the rest account for the general population. But there's another thing, that over the centuries, all these races have intermixed together and through intermarriages, and as a result, the India of today is basically a mix of all these races, and one cannot truly define Indian as a specific race.
And the racial features found in the people of India, they are commonly found across South Asian countries like Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh, and also in other countries like Malaysia, Philippines, and Fiji. And after the racial identity aspect of Indianness, we have the cultural factor. And the culture or ethnicity is often regarded as a very strong aspect of Indianness. Cultural aspect includes various factors such as food, lifestyle, and religion. But in the cosmopolitan world, while the other aspects of culture can be tweaked, one permanent aspect of one's culture is religion, and in the Indian subcontinent, it plays a very crucial role.
Yeah, so there is this argument that those religions that emerged in India are Indian and the others are somehow considered less Indian.
Yeah.
So we can take the example of how the religions of Jainism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhism are considered intrinsically Indian since they emerged on Indian soils. And on the other hand, those religions that find their origins elsewhere, such as Christianity, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, and Islam, are considered foreign. But if we take a look at the two biggest so-called foreign religions in India, like Christianity and Islam, both came to India around the 1st century AD and the 7th century AD respectively, much before foreign invaders had come to the Indian subcontinent.
And this argument about the Indianness of certain religions is supported by the proponents of Hindutva, and these include many of in the current government as well. We have spoken about this as well in our earlier video on secularism.
What we are trying to talk about here is that what is the Indianness of certain religions.
Yes.
But this criteria is questionable because it does not cover a very large population. And because of course we see that there are so many religions thriving in our country. And
Yes.
then there's also this other thing that we have to mention here is that in the modern society, how can we talk about, we are completely overlooking the people who do not subscribe to any religion, like
Yes.
people who are atheists or agnostics. So how will we classify them? Like if we are classifying Indianness based on religion, what will they be classified as?
And we also have to talk about those who have converted to other religions. Does conversion to another religion rob them of their Indianness? And we also have the case of foreigners like actress Julia Roberts, who has converted to Hinduism, whether she would be regarded as an Indian just because she is a member of an Indic religion.
What we understand is that religion cannot be a reason for Indianness because it's a very flawed argument. So now we come to the final category, which is legal. Who is an Indian in the legal sense?
With regards to the legal aspect, it is the citizenship laws that define who is an Indian and who is not. And these laws are framed by the Parliament under Articles 5 to 11 of the Indian Constitution. Over the years, these laws have changed a number of times throughout independent India's history. And you can check it out in our video explaining the Citizenship Amendment Act, the link for which is on the screen right now. But the major change that the citizenship laws have seen over the years is the shift from jus soli, which is the citizenship acquired by birth, to jus sanguinis, that is citizenship determined by the nationality of one's parents.
And then there is the most recent amendment to the citizenship laws, which caused a furor also, the Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019.
Yes.
Which has brought in a big question on who is Indian and who is not by putting a religious criteria on citizenship. This has been debated over and over again. The CAA provides a path to Indian citizenship for illegal migrants of Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Jain, Parsi, and Christian religious minorities who have fled persecution from Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan before December 2014. And notably, Muslims have been excluded from this list.
Yes. But if we look at the fine print of Indian citizenship, we find that the likes of Alia Bhatt, Akshay Kumar, Sundar Pichai, they are not claimants of Indian citizenship.
But they often stand side, like people, but they are like unquestionably considered Indian.
But on the other hand, we have Sonia Gandhi, who, as we mentioned, has been continuously vilified for her Italian origins. She is actually a legal Indian citizen.
When we've talked so much about this, the next question that comes up is that is the fixation on nationality helping anybody? Since we've spoken about a lot of actors, we'll talk about the entertainment industry first.
Yeah, back in 2016, after the Uri attack, actors and musicians from Pakistan, they were banned in India, and such actions were taken in the name of nationalism. And back then, Pakistan was singled out because of the continued skirmish on the India-Pakistan border. But on the other hand, we have artists like from other countries like UK or Sri Lanka. They are welcomed into the film industry. What these actors from other countries, including Pakistan, what they do is that they not only enrich our entertainment industry, but they can also be crowd pullers for Indian films.
Here we should mention that in the film Ae Dil Hai Mushkil, Fawad Khan's role was dramatically cut.
Yes.
To keep in with the nationalistic emotions of the country during that time. But
Yes.
Fawad is a very popular actor in Pakistan as well as India.
Yes, more than that, a lot of Pakistani soap operas and a lot of music is quite popular in India.
Very popular in India. Yes, that is true. And of course, this is actually sort of a soft power. This is something that we import and export.
Yes.
Our culture, our traditions to them, and they do the same to us. If we're not talking about this, even economically, this adds to India's foreign exchange.
Yes, and when we're talking about soft power, we can look at how in US a lot of Indian actors are starting to get cast in movies and TV shows. And in US, this is seen as an attempt to capture the Indian media entertainment market.
This again points to the fact that cultural influences have a great economic impact. This is what I said earlier, a softer power.
Yeah.
And we see historically as well, kings and emperors like Chandragupta, Vikramaditya, Akbar are known to patronize artists and craftsmen to encourage good trade and prosperity.
Yeah.
So if India wants to be a global superpower, it has to discard the nationality-based naming shaming. Of course, since we've mentioned this, the biggest example would be the permanent loss of Pakistani market for Indian movies. Also, it is important to note here that since 2003, the Indian government has been making consistent efforts to leverage PIO relations to usher business and other cultural influences in India.
Yeah, and we can take the example of the Pravasi Bharti Divas and other programs organized by the Ministry of External Affairs.
Like Know Your Country.
Yeah, and when we consider this whole argument about Indianness and nationality, this whole anti-national tag, it runs counter to these efforts made to leverage India's foreign relations.
And this does not any which way mean that India should discard identifying PIO as they are not really Indians.
Yeah.
PIOs are also very important, and there is nobody can diminish the importance of Indian diaspora in other countries. It helps us in information exchange.
Yeah.
And they represent our country in the outside world. So of course they are there. But what we must remember is that we should not be very enthusiastically labeling people as Indian or not Indian.
Yeah.
On very superficial things. The only thing that can decide is Indian or not is the constitution. And we've also understood that how the anti-national tag and the ease with which India as a society is now labeling people as anti-national is hampering or can hamper its economy as well. So very simply, in conclusion, if India wants to become a superpower, then it needs to behave like one. And openness to ideas, meritocracy and maturity in political discourse is the way to go. We cannot still be fighting about who is an Indian and who is not. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, share and subscribe. You can also follow us on Twitter. Stay tuned for more. Thank you.
Bye.